Good morning YouTube, and welcome to attempt 3 of this video. Damn you, camera! Today, as you can probably tell by the title, I'm going to be talking to you about my top 10 books / graphic novels. This was chosen by you as a vote with your feet sort of thing, as in more people have watched my top 10 movies video than any other video I've made, so tops for you. I'm going to start with my favourite graphic novel. My favourite graphic novel, which is Scott Pilgrim series, in brackets. I know it's not all one, but I read it all in one go, so that's how I'm counting it. By the way, these are my top 10, as in my 10 favourites, not in any sort of order. Funniest graphic novel I've ever read. The best art style, my favourite sort of art style. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Tops in my book. Go and read it, and then join me and the fellow Pilgrimites in the r/Scott Pilgrim in the infinite sadness that is infinite sadness. There will be no more Scott Pilgrim. Good news, there is another graphic novel by the same author coming out soon, so yay for that. Number 9, Harry Potter books. As you can probably tell, I'm a hyper nerd, and therefore I have read every single Harry Potter book cover to cover. I reread them again as an adult, so you know. I know they're good because I have read them all. This has probably been said, but I prefer the books to the films, even though the films have got Emma Watson in them, and Emma Watson is one of my favourites. Number 8. Now, number 8 is an interesting one, as in it stands out on here as the only autobiography. Now, the autobiography is of Frankie Boyle, so if you can find Frankie Boyle's autobiography, give it a read, it's brilliant. I love Frankie Boyle as a comedian, and finding out where he came from as a comedian and what made him the way he is and what made him as dark as he is as well was interesting. It was interesting, yeah. Number 7. Death Note. For number 7, I quite like graphic novels. I haven't read many graphic novels, but I've read a few graphic novels, and Death Note was one of the first that I read, because I borrowed it off my then girlfriend and sort of read them issue by issue, sort of swapping them over, trying to get through them as fast as possible, eating up the story, because I read graphic novels differently to the way I read books. I read graphic novels in sort of a massive binge of, like, I'm going to consume all of this media at once. Whereas books, I like to space out, spread out and stuff. This was the start of that, whereas I would binge on a book, and I'd go one book and just read it in a night, take it back to the next day and get the next one. Good, brilliant character development, genius plot. Number 6. Number 6 is a bit of a less well-known book on here. Like, pretty much all of the books on here are quite well-known, whereas this one's slightly out of the left field a little bit, and it is what I call the Belgariad series of books. I don't know how to pronounce it, I've only ever heard me or me dad pronounce it, because he's the one that showed it to me. He bought me the first book when we were on holiday, and I can remember nothing about the holiday other than the book, because I had my nose buried in that book for the entire holiday. Twice, actually. Once to read it, and once to try and understand. Like a lot of fantasy fiction, it is quite hard to read, so this is one of my top tips for reading fantasy epics like Lord of the Rings, Belgariad and such. Get one of these. This is a black notebook. Handy, handy, handy. Brilliant. Highly recommend the Belgariad. Go out and read it. Plus there's a million books to keep you going for practically forever, so. Number 5, what list about books and graphic novels would be complete without me talking about Watchmen? Watchmen was the first dark, serious, adult graphic novel that I read, and it was before I even read Dark Knight Rises, so you know, quite good on that one. I thoroughly enjoyed it. First sort of adult graphic novel I read, and highly recommend it if you've already read it, because everyone owns 4 copies of it already. Number 4, The Hunger Games. I read The Hunger Games in quite a weird way, and I know people are going to hate me for this. I watched the trailer for the first film, thought I have to get me some of that right now. Found out, because it said it's based on a book, so I went out and I bought all 3 books at once. Then I read the first book cover to cover, read the second book cover to cover, and then got halfway through the third book and then put it down. Don't know what happened. I might have gotten tired of the book or something. My brain was tired because I read 2 books in the space of about 5 minutes. So, you know, So recently, after watching the second film in the cinema, I went and read through the entirety of the third book, and brilliant, loved it. Highly recommend The Hunger Games if you haven't already read it. Number 3 is Looking for Alaska. Looking for Alaska is a John Green book that I bought when I first found out that John Green's big book was coming out, and I pre-ordered a copy of that. So to get myself in the mood, I ordered myself, I know you're going to hate me for this as well, a copy of Looking for Alaska second-hand from Amazon. It cost me like 20p with free shipping, and I got it shipped to me next day. And it was late in my first year of uni, where I had nothing to hand in, just sat down, everything was already handed in, dealt with, and I put music on, and I read this book in a night. Hilarious, thoughtful, brilliant story, and just highly recommended. Number 2, Lord of the Rings. I included Lord of the Rings before I knew that I was going to do series. I included Lord of the Rings as one because that is the way I consumed it as a book. In my house there was this massive tome, essentially. After my dad gave me The Hobbit to read, like when I was 12 or something, he gave me The Hobbit. So he gave me The Hobbit and I read it and devoured it and really enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyable book. Even now, I even reread The Hobbit before I went to see the first and second movie. Brilliant, thoroughly enjoyed it. So then Dad gave me this massive book that took me months to chew through, like months and months and months and months and months. And I finally got through Lord of the Rings, and it was heroic and sad and happy and funny and made me laugh and kept me going for forever. And I reread it again recently, and I reread it, and it took me about a week, and I got through the entire thing, and I was so happy that all of the memories that I had of this book stayed with me and came back as I was reading it. And number 1, the last one on my list, is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. The second John Green book. What do you know? For those of you that don't know, John Green is a YouTuber who, with his brother Hank, sort of run the Vlog Brothers, and they're brilliant, hilarious, funny, whatever. John wrote a book called The Fault in Our Stars that is still a year after release on the Amazon bestsellers list. It's that good a book. And for those of you that have read it, you will understand the mistake that I made the first time I read this. I read it on the train. Well, I read the last lot of the book on the train. This isn't a book you want to read in a public place. This is a book that you want to read curled up at home by yourself, where no one's going to bother you and no one's going to look at you funny for being sad at a book. That's my list of my top 10 books / graphic novels. I hope you agree with me. If you don't, then in the comments down below, feel free to list other books that I might enjoy. So if there's a book that you think I would enjoy thanks to this list, like taking inspiration from this list, please feel free to tell me and recommend it to me in the comments, and I will give it a go. And in a month I will get back to you and see. Thanks guys for watching, and as always, bye. It's alright, we'll just sit here while the plane goes over. Well, that was exciting.